Hey, hello everybody. I have a guest. Where am I pointing? Here's the guest. I have a wonderful guest. So I have Scott Stoll back through popular demand. You're very, very popular when we had you on before, Scott. And we're going to be talking a little bit about gut health, an exciting event that's coming up. But first, would you please introduce yourself to my community and those that missed you, and tell everybody what you do and your because you're such a fascinating career, and what you do is just so incredibly powerful. You give so much to the world. So over to you.
Well, thank you, Sophie. I'm so delighted to be back, and I really appreciate the invitation to join you again, and also the invitation to be a part of your beautiful community. So thank you, and hello to all of you that are watching. Despite the challenges in the world, I sincerely hope and pray that you are all well and learning how to thrive by watching Sophie and hearing all of her amazing advice about how to keep your body healthy and well and how to de-stress and find joy through every day. So I'm glad to be here. As a quick reintroduction, my name is Dr. Scott Stoll, and I am the co-founder of the Plantrician Project, which was a really kind of fun idea that started back in 2012. And I was working with a friend of mine, and I was thinking back about all of the time that I spent, and then it was, probably almost 10 years of personal study to understand plant-based nutrition and how to apply that in clinical practice. And so I said to my friend, why don't we start a conference to teach doctors and healthcare providers about food as medicine, whole food plant-based nutrition. And so my friend said, sure, let's do it. And so now here we are, 2021, 8 years later. And we have a number of conferences, and specifically the one we're going to just talk briefly about tonight is the 2021 International Dietary Interventions for Gut Health Conference on February 20th, which we're really excited about because gut health is so important. And I know that you all have studied gut health and are learning more, but it's such a fascinating topip. So thanks for allowing me to be here tonight, Sophie.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Scott. That's such a great, thank you for giving that in such a nutshell, the last 8 years of your life. But, seriously, why I am blown away with what you do and what you've decided to do is that, Scott, I spend so much time sort of explaining how little nutrition education our doctors get, and many of the doctors that I speak to, they go, yeah, absolutely, we get we get this much nutritional education. And it is so interesting that you started off by saying, food is medicine. And when you said that, I'm like, yeah, food is medicine. And yet, the doctors, I have a wonderful doctor, I have a wonderful internist, but he doesn't really, I wouldn't follow his nutritional advice at all. So you've come in and you've spent the last 8 years putting this together, which is a huge labor of love and commitment and dedication to educate our healthcare professionals and our doctors. And I'm seeing more and more, I'm sure you definitely are, but I'm seeing the tide begin to turn. Are you seeing a little bit of a change now in that respect?
Yeah, and it's so exciting to see what's happened over the last 8 years, and really over the last 3 to 4 years, there's been a real shift in kind of awakening in healthcare. More and more healthcare providers are waking up to the idea that we have to do something different. We know we can't continue to practice medicine the way that we've practiced it and expect to get different results. And most doctors went into medicine because, all of a sudden, our medical school interviews, we want to help people. And we found ourselves as a profession in a position where, if we step back and take a look at it, we're helping people to some extent, but not like we really wanted to when we started medical school. We wanted to see people's lives transformed. And, for most doctors, at least 55% of them are burned out today because of the system. So they're really facing a squeeze. They didn't have that education in medical school. It's hard to find the time to learn something new. And so that's why we've created these educational opportunities. We have a large conference that we do every September non-COVID years, we do one in New York. We're starting one in Bangkok. I work with Prince Khalid to do one in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. So we're doing them around the world. And then we're trying to do these shorter one-day kind of focused conferences like this one in February 20th around gut health to educate healthcare providers about some of the emerging science around using food as medicine to treat diseases like irritable bowel syndrome, reflux disease, colon cancer prevention, and these really important aspects of clinical care that, if most physicians and healthcare providers are honest, we do not have good solutions for these conditions. We give medications that have a lot of side effects. People come back and they're still suffering, and it's frustrating for both the doctor and the patient. And so we're hoping that this one-day conference on gut health and others that we do in the future it's like a booster of information and education that helps move physicians and healthcare providers into a better place where they can help their patients.
Wonderful. And everybody who's watching, so if you've just hopped on, I'm with Dr. Dr Stoll, and he has done, aside from, being a very busy doctor, he has taken it upon himself to educate clinicians, doctors, and, our healthcare professionals in this area that's lacking. And what's super exciting, everybody, is that usually in non-COVID times, so there's a little bit of a silver lining here, isn't there, in this respect? This was really focused on, doctors and healthcare professionals, and you'd go and, get a seat at the conference, and people would travel from all over the world to get this education in these events, these conferences that Dr. Stoll put together. Now, the good news is that now they are virtual, which means that you can attend or your doctor can attend. So the next one that's coming up, as Dr. Stoll has just said, is February the 20th. It is a one-day conference, and it is all about gut health. So, Dr. Stoll, if anybody wants to come and join this and they want to sign up and watch it from the comfort of their own home, which honestly, for many of you in my community who, you're educating yourself, you're putting all this together, I highly recommend you do. Or even that you might want to just say to your doctor, hey, listen, this is a great, if you have a doctor who is has exhibited an interest in nutrition, you might want to pass it on to them. How do we do it, Scott? Shall I, we'll put a bit of a link in there later, but how do people join?
Yeah, it's very easy. If you go to plantricianproject.org and click on the events banner and scroll down, you'll see our February 20th Dietary Interventions for Gut Health Conference, and you can sign up right there. And as you said, Sophie, anybody can join, and that's one of the silver linings of this kind of virtual type of conference, is that anybody around the world can join us for the conference. We'll even have some enduring time after the conference for at least 6 months where you can go back and watch those lectures again and learn from some of these international experts that we've brought together around this topic.
That's fantastic. And if any of you are training, that you have a certification in this in any field relating to health, nutrition, or whatever else, you can also get CECs, right, from attending.
That's correct. Yes, we work with Rush University to provide those continuing education credits.
Fabulous. So it's all about gut, and I learned so much from the last conference. It was fantastic, and it was so well put together as well. It just, sometimes you think, because I've done so many conferences myself over the years, and I do enjoy going to conferences, and I was like, oh, what is this? Am I going to get the same feeling? But actually, it's just so interesting and beautifully the way you stitched everything together, and had the Q&As and the presenters, and you bring together really what is so impressive is that you bring together really the best of the best in terms of researchers, scientists, and doctors who present, and so for anyone watching, honestly, I really recommend that you go to this one day and learn everything you can. And this isn't just learning it from a book that you're picking up. This isn't learning from a YouTube video. This is learning cutting edge information and research and science is cut. I learned things on that conference, Dr. Stoll, that I pride myself in keeping up and really, trying to keep up with the latest everything. But there's so many things that I learned. I was like, oh, really? Because it's new stuff. It's new emerging science, and particularly gut health. Let's talk about gut health. I mean, as a doctor, gut health, we now understand to be the foundation of its mental health as well as our, physical health. Will you talk a little bit about that? Why is it so important, Dr. Stoll?
Well, it's not like we haven't known this for a long time. We just forgot it. Hippocrates says all health begins in the gut. And interestingly, too, Hippocrates, when he took a history for a physical with a patient, he would ask about how the food was grown, what type of soil the food was grown in, all the way back to the soil, because he understood that so much of health is related to that interaction between our gut and the food that we eat. What he didn't know is how important it actually was, and that it involved 30 to 50 trillion bacteria that live in our gut. And even more than bacteria, what's so interesting is our microbiome is a vast community of bacteria, of fungi, of viruses, and these single-celled organisms called archaea, which we're just learning about as well. So it's this dynamic population of all of these little critters that live in our gut that are really interacting not only with our food, but they're influenced by our environment, by our lifestyle choices, by how much sleep we get, kinds of beverages that we're drinking. It all impacts the types of bacteria that live there. And when you have a healthy community, a healthy, thriving community, it's responsible for 70% of the health of your immune system. It is responsible for impacting blood vessel health, for influencing our hunger and satiety signals. When we have an unhealthy bacterial population, it can actually trigger cravings. So we think cravings are just up here, but it's actually originating in the gut. The bacteria are craving sugar, fat, and salt, and so much more. It's such an important component of health.
That's so fascinating. It's always fascinating to me, Dr. Stoll, because I am a weight management specialist. And so to me, almost one of the number one things to address is gut health, because otherwise, in terms of getting to your ideal weight and staying there, you're on an uphill battle. If your gut health is impaired or is not as healthy as it could be. And that's why it's just so interesting to me that many of the trendy diets of today, such as the paleo, the keto, the high protein, the low carb, and all of that business, is almost ridiculous. It doesn't even have a logic to it, because those are the very foods that create inflammation and gut dysbiosis. And so, of course, you're going to end up craving foods. You're going to end up feeling hungry, not being satiated. It's just simply, even if it were healthy, which is not, it's not going to be sustainable in terms of weight loss. So I love that connection that you made between weight loss and gut health. And I also love that you said, 70% of our immunity depends on the community in our gut. And it's so interesting how our gut is like a it's the microorganism, if you like, if we look at the macro out there in the world, and that, 70% of our survival depends on us having good community and all getting along together. But it's the same, it's reflected in our gut, isn't it?
It truly is. And a couple of interesting points too around weight management that you probably know. We become like the people that we hang out with most. When I was a little boy, my grandpa Stoll used to tell me, Scotty, just remember, if you hang out with the pigeons, you're going to get poop on your head. And so, it's absolutely true that the people that we hang around with, we become like, the way we think, our finances. But what's really interesting, the microbiome is impacted by the friends that we have, and we actually begin developing a microbiome similar to our friends. We share bacteria back and forth just by being in community with one another. And so we begin developing the same microbiome as our friends. And so this is part of the reason, there are a number, but one of the reasons that, when people are developing friendships with another group that is overweight or obese, it's not just eating habits, but it's a sharing of the microbiome. And we know that, a dysbiotic microbiome that's kind of upside down, impacts the calories that are absorbed from the food that we eat. And so when we have this unhealthy microbiome, it may be sucking in more calories and causing us to gain weight. And we don't realize that, our friends are also impacting that microbiome that's absorbing more calories and causing us to gain weight. And we also know the opposite is true, that when people change that microbiome, that they start to lose weight almost automatically with a healthy microbiome.
That's absolutely fascinating. Fascinating that the people you're with, because I didn't actually know that about sharing the microbiome with the people around you. I mean, I know that it makes it much harder to maintain a healthy weight if you're around people who, we tend to sort of migrate to the habits of those around us. But that's absolutely fascinating. Also, talk a little bit about, I think one of the things that I find so interesting about the satiety signal is the short chain fatty acids. Now, let's talk about what is the I know what it is, but I would love you to share it with everybody. What is the ideal diet for releasing these short chain? If you could just explain what the short chain fatty acids are and how can we get more of them?
Yeah, sure. So let's start with, this is probably a good place to start because it's talking about diets. So often people ask all of us that are plant-based, where do you get your protein? It's one of the most common questions. And, it's so much more obvious now. There's so much research that shows that when you eat a plant-based diet, you have more than enough protein. But I always reciprocate with this question. I always ask my friends, well, where do you get your fiber? And they can't answer that because their diets are grossly deficient in fiber. When we look at like ancient Paleolithic people groups, they consumed between 70 and 150 grams of fiber. They were largely plant-based. They were feeding their healthy microbiomes, as we're going to talk about in a minute, with fiber. But what we see is that today, most people are like between 15 and 30 grams of fiber. People are not getting enough fiber. And the fiber is really crucial, not just for regularity every day, as we all came to know from our grandparents, but the fiber actually feeds the bacteria. The fiber that we can't break down as humans goes down and it feeds the bacteria. And when we have that healthy colony, that healthy community of bacteria, all of the fiber from our kiwi and our greens and our mangoes that we're eating goes down into the microbiome, and they chew up and digest that fiber, and it feeds them and they get healthy. And part of the byproducts, the waste products that those bacteria secrete, are these short chain fatty acids. And the short chain fatty acids actually have a number of beneficial effects in our body. So it's a waste product for the bacteria, but it flows back into our bloodstream and it stabilizes blood sugars for up to 4 hours, which helps a lot with cravings. It actually turns over and flips off some master switches of inflammation in our body, the NF-kappa beta switches. It helps to reduce the hunger signals. It helps to promote healthy blood vessels. They help to tighten up the tight junctions in the gut, preventing leaky gut syndrome, and reduce inflammation locally to reduce the risk of colon cancer. So these byproducts from the bacteria have so many beneficial effects, but they're only created when we're eating enough plants with enough of these resistant starches and fibers, non-digestible fibers, that we can feed to the bacteria.
Brilliantly said and laid out. And so really the best diet, obviously, for this, or the gold standard diet for gut health, would you say that is exclusively a whole food plant-based diet?
Yeah, absolutely. And what's I think so challenging for people today is that, most people's microbiome around the world are upside down because of the environment that we live in. Most of us have grown up in a westernized dietary pattern, eating all kinds of junk food, all kinds of animal products and sugar. It's ubiquitous throughout our culture. We are, inundated with these pesticides like glyphosate. And glyphosate, interestingly, was it's originally an antibiotic, but they realized that it also would help to act as an herbicide pesticide. So it doesn't affect human cells, but when we consume it, it impacts our microbiome. And glyphosate is also, in so many of the food products that we consume today, impacting our microbiome. Alcohol impacts the microbiome. Stress impacts the microbiome, which, thanks to the pandemic, is elevated even more than ever before. But that constant cortisol drip from stress disrupts the microbiome. So we have so many reasons that our microbiome is disrupted. And so even greater need to push toward that gold standard, as you said, of being, whole food plant-based. And I always tell people, you can start where you feel most comfortable, but if you're fighting disease, you really need to fight with every bite. And in that case, you need to really strive for 100% whole food plant-based. I know that not everybody can start there, so I'm willing to take wherever they can begin, but that really is the goal, to work towards that plateau of 100%. And if you're fighting disease, you really need to move much more quickly toward that road, especially to get your gut healthy.
Yeah, that's brilliant. So for those of you who have just joined us, just a reminder, go to the Plantrician Project. I'll put a link in the group and on my page and everywhere. But it's called the plantricionproject.com. Did you say yes?
.org.
Oh, sorry, .org. The Plantrician You say it, Dr. Stoll. Please.
I was going to type it in the chat. So Plantrician, so plant, and then like clinician, plant, and then RICIAN, plantricionproject.org.
Great. And then what happens when everybody goes there?
So plantricionproject.org, we have an events banner. If you click on that tab, it'll pull down and you can find our February 20th event on dietary interventions for gut health, and all the sign up information is right there.
Perfect. And that's in the chat right now. I've just put it in for everybody. So you should get that just in a moment. So any questions for anybody watching? So you can please just take this opportunity. We've got Dr. Stoll on for such a short amount of time. Are you East Coast time?
We just moved this year to Nashville, Tennessee. So I'm in Central time now.
You're Central. I know when we last spoke, you were just about to move. So you're in Nashville. Are you loving it in Nashville?
We love it. We love this part of the country. It's been a great transition for our family.
Okay. And Melanie, by the way, I will post the link on YouTube. So you'll get that, Melanie. As soon as this is over, I'll jump in because we have people watching from YouTube and from Facebook. Are you a musician? Because I see a little bit of a guitar in the background.
I'm actually in my son's room upstairs. It was the quietest place in the house tonight. And my son is a musician. There's a banjo here and a guitar back there. And so, but there's some camera equipment behind me. His job is a videographer for music videos. So we couldn't be in a better place than Nashville.
That you could not be in a better place. My husband's a musician. He's a bass guitarist. So it's very familiar for me to see that mounting on the wall. We have literally 30 guitars in our attic, and he has them in every available space. All right, so let's get some questions in here. So we have, wait a minute, we got some great questions, and I'm just going to get these in. So give me a second. All right, here's a question. My family and I like red wine with dinner. You're saying this will mess with our microbiome, or will this mess with our microbiome?
Yeah, so the story on red wine is interesting. There was the idea of the French paradox that if we drink red wine, we're going to be healthier. But when they kind of back out some of the data on the French paradox, we realized it wasn't the red wine that was actually making people healthy. It was more of the plant-based diet. There are good antioxidants in grapes called resveratrol that are very healthy. But when we ferment red wine, alcohol is not healthy for the body. Alcohol does cause cell damage. Alcohol kills bacteria. And so it can begin to alter the microbiome of the gut. The research also shows that for women consuming more than 2 alcoholic beverages a week, it does increase their risk of breast cancer. And so it's not, I consider wine not a health beverage. So we don't want to put it in that category. But if you decide to have a glass of wine occasionally, that's okay. You can enjoy it, but just don't trick yourself to think you're doing something healthy for your body. And I do like to recommend organic wines because of the number of pesticides and nitrates, et cetera, that can end up in conventional wine. So if you are going to drink wine, look for something organic, preferably over the conventional wines.
Beautiful, thank you. All right, we have another question here. This is Deb. I do plant-based with being gluten-free, no red meat. I've been gluten-free for 9.5 years. It's wonderful. Keeping yourself physically is important to me. What about with gluten-free? How do you feel about that, Dr. Stoll? Because I know that gluten-free, I mean, obviously, if you're celiac, you've got to be gluten-free. But for people who aren't celiac, is it true? My understanding is that a lot of the gluten-free products have a lot of refined grains, in them. How does that relate to the gut health?
Yeah, it's very interesting that for most people that are having issues with kind of processed grain products, it's really not the gluten necessarily. There's gluten sensitivity, there's celiac disease, but for a lot of people that struggle with bloating, irritability, diarrhea after they're eating these products, it's more related to the way that it's processed, perhaps the type of wheat that we're growing today. They've bred wheat. It's not a GMO crop, but they've bred wheat so that it's a shorter, easier to harvest wheat, but it's changed the percentage of fat and protein. And in that way, it alters the interaction with the gut. But the other thing that we know is that many of these products are sprayed with pesticides and herbicides, multiple times, sometimes up to 10 times before they're processed.
Yeah.
And certainly those can really impact the gut as well. And it's interesting through the years, there's not a lot of research on this yet. There's small studies, but in my experience as well, working with people that were kind of intolerant of wheat products, when they would go and travel to Europe and eat ancient grain products that were organic, ironically, they had no difficulty with those products, which again kind of confirms it's the type of wheat, it's the number of pesticides, but the ancient grains, they did not have any difficulty with. So yeah, I really think it's the type and all the exposures that we're getting when we're consuming these products.
Right, that's fantastic, and that's I love ancient grains, and I love speaking about wheat and everything. I love the grain farro. It's just a delicious, ancient intact grain. So I'm all about the intact grains, and of course you can get them gluten free as well. All right, so Sandra, question from Sandra: how long does it take before feeling better with plant-based?
Yes, Sandra. The good news is it can happen really quickly within days. And as an example, for the last almost 10 years, I've been a part of our health immersions. And so we'll bring in, 80 to 100 unhealthy people that want to spend a week with us learning about food and eating healthy food, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And what we typically see is that sometimes in the first couple of days, as we get rid of sugar, fat, and salt, there are withdrawal symptoms. So you may not feel good for the first 2 or 3 days because your body's actually detoxifying and withdrawing from the sugar, fat, and salt. But the good news is by day 4, the body starts to come alive. It's exposed to these beautiful nutrients. The inflammation goes down. And by day 5 and 6, boy, the body is really feeling good. And it's very common for people to come up to us at the end of the week and say, I have not felt this good since I was 18. My depression and anxiety have cleared. My thoughts have never been so clear and concise. My pain is dissipated. So it's amazing that, we can enter our body for a decade or 2 with this unhealthy food, unknowingly in most cases, and simply change our diet in a week and experience these profound benefits. And it's, reducing the inflammation in the brain to the joints to, resolving some of the inflammation in the gut. Things can change rapidly and your life can turn around in just a week.
It is. I've seen it time and time and time again. And that's just a week. And then you think a month into it, I work with women who they can't believe it, that as you said, the brain fog is gone. They've got energy that they haven't had since they were 20 years old. It is so, so powerful. So we have a question here. Miss Sunrise, do you have to be exclusively plant-based, or is there benefit going in, say, 70 to 80%?
I'll take anything I can get. I always tell people more plants are better. And so if you are wherever you're starting and you're simply adding more plants into your diet, that's great. But you will find that there's a progressive benefit when you add more and more plants. And so If you're 50%, that's excellent, but you may not experience the benefits that you would at 70%. And at 70%, you may not experience the reduction in pain and inflammation that you would get from 90%. And even at 90%, working with people that have had rheumatoid arthritis or high blood pressure or type 2 diabetes that have been there for decades, they don't see significant improvement and remission of their conditions until they're 100%. And so, any is good, any addition of plants is good, but the more that you add into your diet, you will see progressive and multiplied benefits. And to not get discouraged, if you're not seeing the full benefit and you're only 70%, because it may require that extra 30% for your body to really have the opportunity to heal.
Yeah, well said. That's beautiful. I always say, if you want, it's a choice. And if you want optimal health, then you need an optimal diet. And that really is to do that. And if any of you watching are really struggling with this, and you're struggling, on your journey, your weight loss journey, you're struggling putting this together, then just pop a comment in the comments just saying, help please. And then I can send you a link of how you can, I can send you my masterclass, or look at or a link to, to chat with me to get on a breakthrough call. So just say help please, and I'll go in afterwards. And if anybody wants the link for the Plantrician Project, but I have put it in there, you could say the Plantrician Project, but we'll get to that in a moment. But just say, if you really are struggling, I'm here to help you, and just say, I need some help, please. Now, we have another couple of good questions.
Can I add one thing there, Sophie?
Yes.
Because it's such an important point, and I don't want to miss that. When we talk about percentages of diet and eating 100%, I know it's an easy recommendation to make, but it's much more difficult to apply for so many reasons. Making lifestyle changes, changing habits, family, children, time, convenience, finances, but also the emotional component of food, anxiety, etc. And so I really want to encourage you that if you are struggling or having challenges in making this lifestyle change, you really need the help of an excellent coach. And I believe in coaches and community to make lifestyle changes. And Sophie did not pay me to say this, but it is so important. A coach will make all the difference in the world. A coach, encourages, a coach's accountability. A coach shares secrets and helps you become successful. And it is the best money that you will ever invest, because it will transform your life.
Thank you. I'll take that, Scott. So if you want to have any feeling that you might need some helping hand, and as I say, just say, I want to hear more about that, and I'll explain that to you. I often say that you're absolutely right, Dr. Stoll. It's hard to do it on your own. It is hard to do it on your own. So if you do feel that way, and as Dr. Stoll, as you said so brilliantly, is that, if we were all living a completely stress-free life, and, we're lying on a Hawaiian island or something like that, then it would be much easier to put these lifestyle changes into practice. But most of us are extremely stressed, busy, working, kids, figuring everything else out. And that's where sometimes you do need a lot of support. So here's a great question. This is Jackie, who goes, what is the best gut healing protocol for people living with celiac disease?
The best advice that I can give you, there are some wonderful organizations that are helping people with whole food plant-based diet through celiac disease. And I'll give you some generalities, but there are also specifics, because every person is different. Every person is in a different place of healing or inflammation or disease or scarring. And so this is a situation where it does take some personal coaching to get through. And I'll send you a couple of links to some great organizations that you can put up. There are other great people like Dr. Michael Clapper, who is an expert in gut and will assist you with some personal medical care as well. But in general terms, we have to first remove the foods that are causing inflammation and damage to the gut. And, in most cases, it is the Western diet. It's animal products, it's dairy, it's refined carbohydrates, and it's sugar. and it's alcohol and it's sugar sweetened beverages. It's all those things that are disrupting the microbiome. We have to remove them because we have to stop hitting our thumb with a hammer. I also tell my patients that if we can imagine like any of these gut conditions, like a freshly skinned knee, and every time you're eating, you're rubbing your knee with a piece of sandpaper. So we have to get those things, we have to get those foods out, or it never has a chance to heal. And then depending on where the person is in their condition, sometimes we just start with non-fiber based green juices to allow the body to get exposed to the greens and the phytochemicals, but their body's not ready for fibers. And it's a slow progression, up from with smoothies and cooked vegetables to adding very small amounts of raw vegetables and allowing that gut to heal, along with supportive supplements and nutrition to support the kind of restructuring of the microbiome and a healing of the lining of the gut as well. And I always tell my patients that this is a process that's maybe 12 to 18 months to fully heal the gut, just to set the right expectation. It's not that you won't feel better along the way, but that it does take time, and that we do have to be careful along the way, and that when you're feeling better in 3 months, you can't celebrate by going out and having ice cream at McDonald's because it will flare everything up again. And so it is a diligent process. But the good news is that, for people who are struggling with celiac disease or, any of the inflammatory bowel diseases, that there's tremendous freedom that can come when you go down this pathway of healing the gut with a whole food plant-based diet.
Brilliant. Have you got time for couple more questions?
Sure,
I want to be respectful of your time. So here's one. So 30 years, I'm plant-based, but I cannot give up eggs and occasional fish. What if I have cage-free, which is a little bit of a labeling situation going on there, eggs once or twice per week? Go on, I'll throw this one to you, Dr. Stoll.
Yeah, so I'll tell you, in my experience, I have found that for people that are struggling with some of these conditions, small things make a big difference. I had a patient with rheumatoid arthritis, and one serving of chicken would cause inflammation to flare in her joints. Visibly, we could see it. And so while it may seem like not that much to have eggs once or twice a week, it may be enough to just continually re-irritate the gut lining and prevent full healing and resolution. It may be just enough of a sandpaper on that sore knee that it causes everything to remain in a continually inflamed condition. And so I would just encourage you, if it's possible, try to find an alternative. Maybe it's like a tofu scramble or another alternative to cooking something that looks like eggs, may taste the same way, but actually gives your body 3 to 6 months without that egg in your gut to see if it actually improves the condition. One of the other interesting things is that both eggs and meat contain carnitine in meat and choline in eggs that does cause our microbiome to produce inflammatory molecules, trimethylene, and it's oxidized in the liver, trimethylene oxide, TMAO, that causes inflammation. And so, in some people that have a microbiome that's not very healthy, a couple times a week of eggs may cause a production of this TMAO that perpetuates inflammation in the body.
Great, fantastic. Thank you. So Jenna, there's your answer on that. It is interesting. I love what you said, because a lot of people say, oh, well, can I have a little bit of this or a little bit of that? And I think what's so powerful that you just said is that what might seem to be a little bit of this or a little bit of that could be the straw that breaks the camel's back in terms of, inflammation, in terms of so many different pieces. So again, it goes back to that what I would encourage you, Jenna, is that I can't give up. I would encourage you, putting my little coaching hat on here for a moment, to just dig into that a little bit and maybe explore what if it were possible that you could. and this is going into some beliefs work, but just saying, just throwing that out there. So Dr. Stoll, will you give us a little bit of a preview or a little bit of a taster of who's coming, who's going to be speaking at this event, and what everybody can expect to find? I know that I've got some ladies on here who are studying nutrition. They're studying to be, to be a nutritionist or a health coach and whatnot. And I think it'd be really interesting for them to know who's going to be there, who's going to be presenting, what can they hope to learn.
Yeah, I have a unique topic. It's a little bit niche, but it's really exciting because it's so important. Dr. Edwin McDonald from Chicago will be there talking about tube feeds. And this may seem so esoteric, like, why do we need to know about plant-based tube feeds? But when we consider, the number of people that are receiving tube feeds, be it, people in the ICU, people that are receiving, nutrition at home from accidents, and all of the children that are getting tube feeds on a daily basis, it's actually a really significant group of people that previously were just getting, basically sugar, protein in their tube feeds and expected to heal. They were just approaching nutrition from, let's give them protein, some carbohydrates, and fat. But the plant-based tube feeds actually have the opportunity to give the body what it needs to really heal, and we can just pump in powerful nutrition. So it's a topic that's not been really addressed in the plant-based nutrition space in any way significantly. And so, to my knowledge, this is maybe the first time that we've had a more public lecture on plant-based tube feeds. And so I'm really excited about that. And for, moms that have children that have issues and are feeding through a PEG tube, this is really good news, an exciting opportunity to learn about this topic. We have Dr. Alan Desmond coming in. He's an expert from England talking about colon cancer and the importance of a plant-based diet in preventing colon cancer. And it is so important. What you eat directly is linked to your possible future of either getting colon cancer or not getting colon cancer. And bite by bite, we can prevent that from happening in our bodies. We have some other outstanding lectures on the microbiome. Dr. Vanessa is going to talk to us about the microbiome. And as you know, this is such an interesting topic, and there's so many articles that come out every single day that I can't keep up. So it's wonderful to have an expert come in who is following this and help us to understand that incredible dynamic interaction between the food that we're eating, the way that we live in our lives, and optimizing this microbiome. And I'm also personally interested to try and learn what I can do to improve my microbiome, because I know I live in this kind of toxic milieu, and there are things that I can do. So I'm excited to learn from her as well. We have some great lectures. Dr. Michael Clapper, I called him up on the phone and I said, Michael, I really would like you to spend some time and do a deep dive on reflux disease, because it's so important. And I've not seen a real lecture on reflux disease and medications and managing and tapering off medications and how you do that with your diet. So Michael has spent the last few months researching that for us, and he's going to come in with a brand new lecture that I think is going to be excellent and help people understand how to break free from the medications, because it's easy to start a plant-based diet, but it's not as easy to taper yourself off those medications. And so he'll have some new information for all of us. So that's just a quick snapshot. We have a lot of other exciting lectures. It's a full day. It's 8 hours of lecture with an excellent Q&A with all of the panelists at the end. And so, a great place for people to ask their questions and get information from the experts that are reading this material on a daily basis.
Fantastic. So everybody go to, and I'm going to put it in, I'm going to put the link in once more. So go to the Plantrician Project.org. I just put the link in there. And, there are some of you, I can see some of you on here already who are so interested in this topic. And it's such a, you will learn so much. And as I said before, this isn't just sort of recycled information. This is cutting edge. This is Dr. Stoll going and asking, a prominent researcher and doctor, could you put together? I'm really excited to see that particular lecture on, the reflux, because it's such a major problem. And so this is going to be fascinating. I want to finish with this, because I really want to respect your time. And everybody, if we haven't got to your questions, we'll have Dr. Stoll back on again. But what I want to say is, it's just interesting. You can see on the wall behind me, you can just see that picture right there. Well, you don't see who it is, but that is somebody who is she's sadly passed away, somebody who is very, very important to me in my life, a great mentor of mine for 30 odd years. And she passed away through colon cancer, and she didn't know. She didn't know. A lot of people, it just, as you were speaking, I thought, gosh, so many people that, we know and love just don't know this information. So what you are doing is so far reaching, Dr. Stoll, because you just coming on here and just talking to my community and doing all this work and community work that you do and being a doctor. But what I so appreciate is that you're teaching the doctors and clinicians and health coaches, etc., so that they can go out there and spread that awareness. So it's just awareness rippling out of the fact that we can either harm or heal our bodies, and that it does start with the microbiome. And so I'm so happy that this is a whole day that's concentrated on this topic. So everyone who's watching, please, you can come. You don't have to be a doctor. That's the beauty of it being virtual. You can just be somebody who's just interested in these topics for you and your family and community and friends. So you can just go along and sign up for that. And if you are doing health coaching or whatever else, you can get your continuing education credits, and that's all laid out for you. So go along and sign up. So I just want to thank you and if I haven't answered your question, I will. I'm going to put links in there. If you've asked for a link that you need my help, I'll go in and do that. If any of you want any more information or a specific question for Dr. Stoll, then pop that in the chat as well, and I can always get those questions over to our busy doc here. So thank you very, very much for spending your time, your busy evening, chatting to us, for putting this thing together. And I'm so excited. It's just around the corner.
Well, thank you, Sophie, so much for having me and for allowing me the opportunity to be a part of your community this evening. And I just wish all of you a beautiful night and health and vitality as you move forward. Thank you, Sophie.
And is there any last thing that you want to say pertaining to optimal, if you could give 1-2 tips, just little takeaway tips tonight, what would it be? A couple of takeaway tips that you would give for people to improve their microbiome right away.
I guess 2 tips. Number 1, get a good night's sleep. We don't realize how important sleeping is, and to get 7 hours of sleep really makes a big difference, not only in reducing stress and cortisol, but it also mitigates some of that eating that occurs when we're feeling tired and drinking coffee. So a good night's sleep. And actually, I'm going to start and say exercise, because exercise really does modulate the microbiome, and it's really important. So find something that you love to do. It doesn't have to be spandex and dumbbells. It's whatever you enjoy. Like the other night, we wanted to get some exercise. So we played Tickle Monster at our house, and I chased my children around for half an hour until I was sweating, and they were happy. So there's lots of ways to be active, but all of that is really, really important for your microbiome. And on top of that, whole food plant-based diet, as Sophie will teach you.
I love it. I love that you just left us with those 2 things, because sometimes we think it's just food, but it's everything. It's holistic. And sleep, absolutely. Sleep, exercise, and food. So I popped my link, and a few people asked me on Facebook and YouTube, I popped my link in if you want to book a call with me to discuss. So it's all good, but thank you so much. And you're probably going to go and have your dinner now if you haven't had it already. I'm about to have my plant-based dinner, and we look forward to having you back. You're a regular.
My honor. Thank you. All right. Bless you all. Have a good night.
Okay.
Thanks.
Bye. Bye.